321 Media and the Greater Mystic Chamber of Commerce is back with another episode of Community Conversations. I'm Bruce Flax, and I'm here at the Coast Guard Museum offices, not the museum, with Wes Pulver, the president of the museum. Welcome, Wes.
Welcome to you. Glad to have you here.
So let's talk about it. We're in your office right now, but across the way we can see the museum coming up above everything. What's happening with the museum?
Things are going great. We're right now in the throes of building the structure itself. We anticipate by the end of this calendar year that the museum will be done. And our goal is to actually, at that point, gift the museum to the U.S. Coast Guard so they can start their responsibility of filling with artifacts and great stories and folks ready to tell those stories, so that in 2027 we can open it up, a free museum to the American public.
It's amazing. It's going to be such a great addition to southeastern Connecticut and really continue to build the region to become one of the premier destinations for people in the Northeast. But one of the boats that's going to be out front is the Eagle.
That's correct.
Which is close to you.
Yes. So I had the opportunity in my Coast Guard career to serve 5 years. So I did a total of 28 years, half that time afloat. And of my 14 years afloat, 5 were on board the Coast Guard Bark Eagle. Training cadets representing our country around the world. It was fantastic.
And how many years were you in the Coast Guard?
Just about 28 and a half years. I did active duty after my 4 years at the Coast Guard Academy just up the street.
And to get a little bit more background, so I know when we were talking earlier, you had told me that you actually have been 42 ports?
42 countries.
42 countries.
Maybe one or two more ports. So the Coast Guard, and why we have to tell the story of the Coast Guard, right? We don't tell the story that I've been all around the world.
Mm-hmm.
After the fall of the Soviet Union, they had a Coast Guard cutter in the Black Sea meeting with countries to see if they're more interested in more of a Coast Guard versus a nuclear navy.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a State Department and a DoD mission that the Coast Guard did. And I spent time, so I've been in the Black Sea, the Mediterranean, the Eastern Pacific, the Caribbean quite a bit with the anti-drug work. But yeah, I've really been around the world with the Coast Guard, and something that folks don't know about our service, and we look forward to telling that story.
Yeah, and so for me, because I guess I'm not up on these things, but like the difference between the Navy and the Coast Guard. Like they're both serve on the water, but what's
a wonderful partnership. The naval forces, and we work together all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But the Navy's focus on Department of War and focus on our security in that type of defense security, whereas the Coast Guard, we sort of bridge that gap. We're not in the Department of War, we're in the Department of Homeland Security.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're in Homeland Security, we're allowed to have law enforcement authorities. So it gives a different type of asset to the president, to our National Security Council, on how to use different types of assets. But we work together. We've served in every war right alongside the Navy. But right now we have a mesh of missions from people that are right now in the Arabian Gulf with the U.S. Coast Guard, supporting our Central Command, to folks securing our ports, to folks saving lives. We've got people doing things all over, and then most recently looking at some of the sanction work with the oil and the Coast Guard teams going on board and securing vessels because of their unique law enforcement authority.
Mm-hmm.
Coast Guard is just a wonderful asset for our nation. It's incredibly multi-mission. So something that's a lot of fun. You get to do different things on different days.
I think it's really interesting. And how old is the Coast Guard?
The Coast Guard it's really 1790, not the Coast Guard, but the Revenue Marine.
Yeah.
Alexander Hamilton put 10 cutters around our eastern seaboard to enforce tariff laws. And so it was Alexander Hamilton's vision to set up our U.S. Coast Guard. And by the way, one of those 10 cutters was right here in New London, Connecticut, the Argus.
All right.
So it's kind of a real history here in New London, in southeastern Connecticut. Since that time, we got together and brought us together with the Lighthouse Service, the Bureau of Marine Inspection, the Life-Saving Services. They were all brought together, and in 1915, they made one United States Coast Guard. So that's when we call it the naming of the new Coast Guard. But the reality is we've been around since 1790, from the beginning of our nation, and really have played an incredible role for our nation for 236 years.
Yeah. And with the museum, there's clearly a lot of stories to tell.
There are, and telling them and determining how to tell them was really a hard process. We did that in late 2010s. I think it was 2016, 2017. Mm-hmm. We got about 30 or 40 different nonprofits together and said, how do you tell the story of an agency that has 11 statutory missions, and how do you tell it where they have volunteer workforce? It's a Coast Guard Auxiliary. They volunteer the time to active duty, to reserve, to people in a war zone, to people saving lives. And we ended up coming up with 5 different themes. Lifesavers around the globe, things that would connect. Champions of commerce, the work that the Coast Guard does to keep commerce going. All these ports run by the U.S. Coast Guard. Protectors of the environment. The EPA's authority stops at the water edge, and the Coast Guard takes lead there. We talked about national defense, and then enforcers on the seas. All the work that the Coast Guard does as a law enforcement agency, which was the initial vision by Alexander Hamilton. That's expanded incredibly to a lot of the work we're doing for the sanctions, stopping the illegal drugs. This last year, the Coast Guard, over $500 million worth of cocaine right out of the transit zones. The Coast Guard did that. It's just extraordinary.
Yeah, and it's no mistake that the Coast Guard Academy is right down the street. And there's this the connection for New London.
A great connection for New London. New London, as a Coast Guard city, it's really embraced the U.S. Coast Guard, the Academy, the Leadership Development Center, up the river, and then down the river you have the Research and Development Center. All looking forward. That people don't know too much about what the R&D Center does for our service, but they do things like they look at that next oil spill as we get into the Arctic. They look at how do you collect when it's frozen water of ice. How do you handle those type? How do you use UAS to help work with oil spills or detection? There are R&D centers doing that. So this area has an amazing amount of Coast Guard, and then of course we have Eagle here. We have a small boat station here. It's just an extraordinary port for the U.S. Coast Guard, and it has been one since 1791 when Argus was moored here. So it's been a year or two in New London.
Yeah, and so the Coast Guard Museum is going to be, how many stories is it?
Well, the building itself is 6 stories. It'll be 5 stories for the museum. The bottom deck, because we're moving Eagle, it'll be used to have Eagle to basically maintain their gear. So it'll not just be a museum for the service, but it'll be an asset for Coast Guard Bark Eagle and their crew to maintain sails and blocks and all the rest. But 5 decks are, specifically for the museum itself. A welcome desk, a deck, so a floor. The next 3 decks up will be those 5 missions and telling the story. And then the top deck, we're really investing into a STEM center, science, technology, engineering, math, simulators. So when school groups come in, they can really experience what they just learned. And plus we'll have an event center up there. It should be spectacular.
That's unbelievable. So one of the things that I'm really looking forward to is talk about the helicopter that's going to be coming in and placed, and what it's going to be showing, what the purpose of it is.
So we're just 2 months away from actually installing the helicopter. So in the atrium, we wanted to make sure we lighted, you could see through to the waterfront from the bridge, working with the Connecticut team. And we came up with this idea of an atrium with a helicopter and a rescue swimmer. So when you come to it, there will be a Sikorsky, right out of Connecticut, H-60J, Jayhawk helicopter, which will be suspended with a rescue swimmer, and we have a spiral staircase so you can see it from all angles. And it's the image. I'm a ship driver. I always drove the ships, and I gave my friends, I picked on my friends who are aviators, and that's part of the camaraderie of our service. Having said that, the most iconic image of our service is that helicopter rescue swimmer saving lives. So we're putting that front and center in the museum.
Well, you do. I mean, when you think about the Coast Guard, you think about that helicopter and the orange and the like pulling people up from floods or rescue, whatever it is. Like, it's definitely iconic.
It's amazing what they do. It's just amazing. And honestly, if you have a chance to stop by the Academy and you go to the Wall of Remembrance of the Academy, you'll see that over the last 50 years, where the Coast Guard has lost most of its people is in helicopters and rescues. And unfortunately for the service, about 2 months ago, we lost a rescue swimmer. These are heroes. We're going to tell the story. We're excited to do that.
And so along with the helicopter, what else are you, like, what are your most favorite things that are going to be placed? So
I'm biased. I love the stories. I love the artifacts. I'm biased because I have grandkids now. And what I'm looking forward to is seeing the youth in the museum. The Coast Guard, and we're working together on a qualification program. So you, as an individual, say 8, 10 years old, a young child can go through and go to different activity stations and then go into simulators and get their Coast Guard pin. That's what I'm excited about, just engaging. And you never know. You never know if someone here otherwise would not have been stimulated. Maybe it's aircraft, maybe it's a ship, maybe it's government service, maybe it's, the environment, whatever if a child walks in and says, well, I could do that, and gets stimulated and gets excited about something, you don't know if it'll change your life. So I'm excited about bringing my grandkids to the museum. I will tell you honestly, that's where my passion is.
Well, I think in this day and age, like how things have changed, if you were putting this museum in 100 years ago or 50 years ago, it would look different than it looks today. I mean, the building might look similar, but what you're putting in there and how you're approaching the public and what interests them and how you get people to engage with the museum is, I'm sure, very difficult. But it's really sounds to me like a really challenging, enjoyable thing to be a part of.
This project's been wonderful. It's a privilege to be part of it. I retired in 2015. I've been with the project since. It's a privilege.
Yeah.
I mean, we work hard. We work a lot. I laugh because in the Coast Guard we switch jobs every 2 or 3 years. So I'm normally used to getting fired every 2 or 3 years. I've been here for a decade. So this is shocking to my wife's like, when do we move? You know, but it's been a privilege to work on this project. Can't wait to see it open. Just excited about where we are with construction. All the contracts are signed. Everything's funded. Incredible support from our private donors. Almost $60 million of private money funded. Federal government's been incredible too. Our Connecticut delegation at the lead there, but it's been very bipartisan. In a time you don't hear that much about that, but I'll promise you we have great support from both sides of the aisle. This museum is going to be spectacular, and we look forward to what it brings to southeastern Connecticut. Mr. Chamber, your region, all the above.
Yeah, I think that seeing all the agencies and people come together and work together, from Mayor Passero and the City of New London all the way up to our delegation and Senator Murphy and Senator Blumenthal and Representative Courtney and
absolutely Representative Delora, all of them.
It's great watching them all come together and do that and working for southeastern Connecticut.
No, they do, and they're bringing this, and it's interesting. I'm from this region, came back to this region, love southeastern Connecticut, proud to call it home, and to have a national military museum here, one of the 5 national military museums. There's 3 in DC, 1 in Ohio, and 1 in southeastern Connecticut. How awesome is this? And and then you look at the opportunities. It's free. The public can come. We're right on the transportation line. Can we work with Shoreline East to make sure people are coming here and the youth from inner city getting here and people can get to it. Amtrak, the ferries. It's a pretty busy place downtown, and the estimates are over 300,000 people a year, and we hope to exceed that. But it's going to take a little effort there too, but we want to tell the story, and we think the story, people are going to want to hear the story. Yeah,
and I think that for this, the story doesn't stop here. I'm sure I'll be talking again before you guys open and getting an update and figure it all out. But I want to thank you for your time today, Wes.
Look forward to having you back.
I want to thank 321 Media and the Greater Michigan Chamber of Commerce for another edition of Community Conversations.